The grand diplomatic hall of the Zarathi Empire stretched endlessly, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 3 artificial suns. Ambassador Marcus Chun adjusted his universal translator and searched for Table 47, where Earth's delegation was supposed to meet with minor trade officials. The hall buzzed with hundreds of alien species, their forms ranging from translucent floating jellyfish to massive silicon-based creatures that moved like living mountains. Marcus squinted at his holographic invitation again. The Zarathi numbering system still confused him, with its base 12 counting and symbols that shifted meaning based on ambient temperature. He spotted what looked like the right table, elegant, isolated, with a perfect view of the ceremony platform. No one else had arrived yet. He sat down, pulling out his datapad to review the trade proposals one last time. Earth needed these mineral rights desperately. The colony ships were already constructed, waiting in orbit around Jupiter, but without the exotic materials only found in Zarathi space. Their fusion drives would never achieve the necessary efficiency for intergalactic travel. A gentle hum filled the air as an anti-grav chair floated toward his table. Marcus looked up, expecting to see the minor trade official mentioned in his briefing. Instead, his breath caught in his throat. The figure in the chair was young by Zarathi standards, probably only 40 Earth years, though her species lived for centuries. Her skin had the characteristic blue-silver shimmer of Zarathi nobility, but something was different. Her lower body remained completely still, and her chair's medical readouts flickered with constant monitoring data. This was Princess Lyralii, the Emperor's youngest daughter. Marcus started to stand, panic rising in his chest. He'd studied enough about Zarathi culture to know that sitting at the wrong table, especially one reserved for royalty, could be considered an act of war. But before he could move, Lyralii raised one delicate hand. "Please sit," she said, her voice carrying through the translator with surprising warmth. "You're exactly where you need to be. Your Highness, I apologize. There's been a mistake. I'm just a trade negotiator from Earth. I was looking for Table 47, and there is no mistake, Marcus Chun of Earth." She maneuvered her chair closer, and Marcus noticed the subtle brain interface circuitry woven into her silver hair. "I arranged for your invitation to be modified. The temperature-sensitive ink changed the number after you enter the hall." Marcus's mind raced. This was either an elaborate trap or something far more complex. The briefing had mentioned Princess Lyralii only in passing, paralyzed from the waist down in an assassination attempt 5 years ago, largely withdrawn from public life since then. Why would she orchestrate this meeting? I mean, no disrespect, Your Highness, but why? Earth is barely a footnote in your Empire's considerations. We have nothing to offer someone of your standing. Lyralii's large violet eyes studied him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. The Zarathi could see across a broader spectrum than humans, and he wondered what she perceived that he couldn't. "You humans have something my people lost long ago," she said quietly. "Hope in the face of impossible odds. Determination when logic dictates surrender. You call it the human spirit. We once had a similar concept, before the Empire grew old and comfortable." She gestured to the vast hall around them. "Look at this gathering. 500 species, all bowing to Zarathi superiority. They come seeking favors, technology, protection. But not your people. You come with proposals of partnership, even though your entire fleet couldn't scratch the paint on one of our patrol vessels." Marcus remained silent, unsure where this was leading. "Tell me," Lyralii continued, "what do your people know of neural regeneration?" The questions seemed to come from nowhere. "We've made some advances. Spinal cord injuries that were permanent a century ago can now be treated in many cases. But our medical technology is primitive compared to yours. Our technology can rebuild a heart, regrow limbs, cure diseases that would devastate your world. But neural tissue..." She touched her chair's control panel with frustration. "The healers say it's impossible. The damage is too extensive. I will never walk again, never dance at the celestial celebrations, never." Her voice trailed off. Understanding began to dawn on Marcus. "You think humans might have a different approach?" "I know you do." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. 3 months ago, my intelligence network intercepted a medical journal from your colony on Proxima B. Dr. Sarah Walsh successfully regenerated complete spinal function in a patient using a combination of gene therapy and something you call bioelectric scaffolding. Marcus's eyes widened. That research was supposed to be classified, still in early trials. How did you? I'm still a princess, Marcus Chun. I have resources. But here's what interests me more than the technology itself. Dr. Walsh developed this treatment not in a billion-credit laboratory, but in a frontier colony with equipment my people would consider ancient. She succeeded because she refused to accept that it was impossible. The ambient noise of the hall seemed to fade as Lyralii continued. My father, the Emperor, believes humanity is insignificant. A young species playing with forces beyond their comprehension. The court agrees. But I've been watching your people for years, and I see something else. I see the species that might save us all. Save you from what? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. From ourselves. From stagnation. From the slow death of a civilization that has forgotten how to dream. She gestured again at the assembly. We rule through superior technology and military might, but when did we last create something truly new? When did we last attempt the impossible simply because it needed to be attempted? Marcus felt the weight of her words. He'd seen it in the negotiations, the casual arrogance of species that had been dominant for so long they'd forgotten what it meant to struggle. What exactly are you proposing, Your Highness? A trade, but not the kind your delegation expects. I want to offer Earth full mining rights to the Kepler sectors, enough exotic material to fuel 1,000 colony ships. In exchange, I want Dr. Walsh and her team to come here to work with me personally. Marcus's heart raced. Those mining rights were worth more than Earth's entire GDP. It would change everything. The court would never approve such a trade. The mining rights alone, the court doesn't need to know the full terms. Officially, Earth will provide cultural consultation to the Empire. Unofficially, Dr. Walsh will work on my condition using human methods, human creativity, human refusal to accept the impossible. And if she fails, then she fails while trying, which is more than anyone here has done in 5 years. Lyralii's expression hardened. But I've studied her work, Marcus. She doesn't approach problems like a Zarathi scientist. She approaches them like a human, with intuition, lateral thinking, and a stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Marcus considered the implications. This could be the opportunity Earth desperately needed, but it could also be a diplomatic disaster. Why trust me with this? Why not approach Earth's government directly? Because governments move slowly, and I don't have time for bureaucracy. But also because of what you did on Sigma Station last year. Marcus froze. The incident at Sigma Station was supposed to be classified. A Zarathi patrol vessel had suffered a catastrophic drive failure near the human outpost. By all rights, Marcus should have let them drift. Relations between Earth and the Empire were strained at best. Instead, he'd violated a dozen protocols to lead a rescue mission, saving all 40 crew members. You know about that? The captain of that vessel was my cousin. He told me about the human who risked his career and his life to save enemies who wouldn't have done the same for him. That's when I knew I had to meet you. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. Lyralii had been planning this for months, maybe longer. What you're asking, it would need to be done carefully. Dr. Walsh would need guarantees of safety, freedom to work without interference. She'll have my personal protection and unlimited resources. More importantly, she'll have patients who believe in her work. Lyralii smiled, and for the first time, Marcus saw hope in her expression. Not just me. There are thousands in the Empire with conditions our medicine can't touch. War veterans, accident victims, those born with neural defects our perfect genetics couldn't prevent. The scope of what she was suggesting hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just about one princess seeking treatment. This was about introducing human medical philosophy to the most advanced civilization in known space. Your father would see this as contamination of Zarathi purity. My father has 3 other children who can carry on his version of purity. I'm the broken one, remember? The one who can't dance at court or lead armies. But perhaps that gives me a different kind of sight. She leaned back in her chair. Do you know what I've been doing these 5 years, Marcus? He shook his head. Learning, not from Zarathi sources, but from every young species in the Empire. The Draxi taught me that strength comes from adapting to weakness. The Morvac showed me that limitations breed creativity. But humans taught me the most important lesson, which was that impossible is just a word used by those who've given up. She touched a control, and a holographic document appeared between them. This is a preliminary agreement. Sign it, and your delegation gets the mining rights they're seeking. Dr. Walsh and her team receive official invitation to establish a research facility on Zarath Prime. And maybe, just maybe, we begin to heal more than just my spine. Marcus read through the agreement, his diplomatic training warring with his instincts. Everything about this was unconventional, potentially dangerous. But as he looked at Princess Lyralii, he saw something that transcended politics and protocol. He saw a kindred spirit, someone who understood that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or military might, but their refusal to accept limitations. The other delegations will ask questions. The mining rights are too valuable for a cultural exchange. Let them ask. By the time they understand what's really happening, we'll have results. Success has a way of silencing critics. She paused, studying him. But you're still hesitating. Why? Marcus set down the datapad. Because I need to know this isn't just about your personal medical needs. If we do this, if we bring human medicine and human thinking to the Empire, it could change everything. Not just for you, but for the balance of power, for the way the Zarathi see themselves and other species. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Her voice carried a fierce determination. The empire my father rules is dying, Marcus. Not from external threats or economic collapse, but from a disease far worse, complacency. We've forgotten how to grow, how to risk, how to dream of impossible things. Your Dr. Walsh dreams of repairing neurons everyone knows can't be repaired. That kind of dreaming is contagious. And if your father discovers the true nature of our agreement, then I'll remind him that I'm his daughter, paralyzed in service to the Empire, seeking treatment from whatever source offers hope. Even the Emperor can't argue with a daughter's desire to walk again. Her expression softened. But more than that, I'll show him results. Not just my results, but the results of every Zarathi who remembers what it means to attempt the impossible. Marcus picked up the stylus, its weight feeling heavier than it should. He was about to make a decision that would affect not just Earth's future, but potentially the future of the entire Empire. But as he looked at Princess Lyralii, brilliant, determined, and refusing to accept the limitations others placed on her, he knew there was only one choice. He signed the agreement. You won't regret this, Lyralii said, her smile transforming her face. Your people are about to change the galaxy, Marcus Chun, not through force or manipulation, but through something far more powerful, the simple refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. As if on cue, the hall's attention turned to the main platform where the Emperor was beginning his address. Marcus and Lyralii watched in companionable silence, both knowing that they'd just set in motion events that would ripple across the stars. Stay for the ceremony, Lyralii suggested. Let the court see us together. Let them wonder why the paralyzed princess is meeting with a human trade negotiator. By tomorrow, the rumors will have spread to every corner of the Empire. And what will those rumors say? That humans and Zarathi are working together on something unprecedented. That the impossible might not be impossible after all. That maybe, just maybe, the youngest species in the galaxy has something to teach the oldest. She maneuvered her chair slightly, positioning them both for optimal visibility. Are you ready to change the galaxy, Ambassador? Marcus straightened his formal robes, thinking of Dr. Walsh back on Proxima B, unaware that her revolutionary research was about to be tested on the grandest stage imaginable. He thought of the colony's ships waiting near Jupiter, soon to be powered by Zarathi crystals. He thought of Princess Lyralii, paralyzed but unbroken, seeing in humanity the spark her own people had lost. "I've been ready my whole life," he said. "I just didn't know it until now." The ceremony continued around them, a celebration of Zarathi power and dominance. But at one small table, a human and a princess sat planning a different kind of future, one where the impossible became possible, where the youngest species in the galaxy reminded the oldest what it meant to dream. Marcus's communicator buzzed softly, a message from Earth's delegation wondering where he was. He ignored it. Some conversations were too important for protocol, some opportunities too precious to lose to bureaucracy. He'd explain later, after the agreement was formalized, after Dr. Walsh was on her way to Zarath Prime. "Tell me about your world," Lyralii said suddenly. "Not the official version for your government's cultural packages. Tell me about the real Earth, the one that produces people like you and Dr. Walsh." So Marcus talked. He told her about humanity's struggles, their wars and failures, their moments of brilliance. He described cities rising from ashes, diseases conquered through sheer determination, the relentless human drive to reach just a little further than should be possible. And as he spoke, he saw something spark in Lyralii's eyes. Not just hope for her own condition, but excitement for what humanity represented. The crowd around them began to disperse as the ceremony concluded, but neither Marcus nor Lyralii moved to leave. They had more to discuss, plans to make, a future to build. The wrong table had become exactly the right one, and a chance meeting had become the first step in a revolution that would spread across the stars. As the artificial suns began their programmed descent toward evening, casting long shadows across the crystalline hall, Marcus realized that this moment would be remembered as a turning point. Not just for Earth or for Princess Lyralii, but for every species that had been told something was impossible. The human spirit, that indefinable quality that drove people like Dr. Walsh to attempt what others wouldn't even consider, was about to be unleashed on a galactic scale. And it had all started because he sat at the wrong table by mistake, or perhaps, as Lyralii suggested, exactly where he needed to be. The next morning, news of the unusual meeting spread through diplomatic channels like wildfire. Who was this human who had captured the paralyzed princess's attention? What could Earth possibly offer that the Empire needed? The questions multiplied, but Marcus and Lyralii were already moving forward with their plans. Dr. Walsh, contacted on Proxima B, initially thought the message was a prank. The idea that her experimental treatment had attracted the attention of Zarathi royalty seemed absurd. But as the reality sank in, the resources, the opportunity, the chance to prove that human ingenuity could triumph where alien superscience had failed, her response was immediate and enthusiastic. Within a week, a small team of human medical researchers was assembled. Neurosurgeons who had been told their techniques were primitive compared to alien methods. Gene therapists who worked with equipment held together by determination and improvisation. Bioelectric engineers who saw possibilities where others saw only limitations. They were not the most credentialed humans available, but they were the ones who, like Dr. Walsh, refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. The Zarathi court watched with a mixture of amusement and disdain as the human medical team arrived on Zarath Prime. Their equipment looked like antiques compared to the gleaming medical centers of the Empire. Their methods seemed chaotic, lacking the rigid protocols that Zarathi science demanded. But Lyralii welcomed them with open arms, providing them with a private facility and protection from court interference. The Emperor himself summoned Marcus for a private audience. The most powerful being in the known galaxy studied the human diplomat with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "My daughter tells me you've given her hope," the Emperor said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Hope is a dangerous thing, human. It leads to disappointment more often than success." "With respect, Your Majesty," Marcus replied, standing straight despite the overwhelming presence before him. "Disappointment is just another word for a lesson learned on the way to success." Your daughter understands this. Perhaps it's time the Empire remembered it as well. The Emperor's expression remained unreadable. You speak boldly for someone whose entire species could be eliminated with a single command. I speak honestly, which I believe Princess Lyralii values more than false deference. The mining rights agreement is legitimate, the cultural exchange real. If human medicine can help your daughter and others like her, isn't that worth more than maintaining the status quo? And if you fail? If this human optimism proves to be nothing but delusion? Marcus met the Emperor's gaze steadily. Then, we'll have failed while trying to help, which is more honorable than succeeding at doing nothing. For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. I see why my daughter chose you. Very well, human. Proceed with your impossible treatments. But know this, if you harm her, if your primitive methods cause her pain without purpose, there is no force in the galaxy that will protect your species from my wrath. I understand, Your Majesty, but I believe you'll be surprised by what humans can accomplish when given the chance. The Emperor dismissed him with a wave, but Marcus caught something in his expression, perhaps a flicker of the same hope that burned in Lyralii's eyes. Even the Emperor, for all his power and ancient wisdom, couldn't entirely resist the human contagion of believing in the impossible. Dr. Walsh and her team began their work with characteristic human determination. They didn't approach Lyralii's paralysis as a problem to be solved with superior technology, but as a puzzle requiring creative thinking. Where Zorathi medicine had tried to force regeneration through nanotech and genetic manipulation, the humans looked for ways to encourage the body's own healing mechanisms. The bioelectric scaffolding that had worked on Proxima B needed to be adapted for Zorathi physiology. The team worked 18-hour days, studying every aspect of alien neural structure. They failed repeatedly, each failure teaching them something new. And through it all, Lyralii was not just a patient, but an active participant, her brilliant mind contributing insights that bridged human intuition and Zorathi knowledge. Word of the project spread despite attempts to keep it quiet. Other nobles with incurable conditions began making discreet inquiries. War veterans who had been told they would never regain full function watched with interest. Even some of the court physicians, initially dismissive, began to observe the human methods with growing curiosity. 3 months into the treatment, Lyralii felt the first sensation in her legs, just a tingling, barely noticeable, but more than she'd felt in 5 years. Dr. Walsh cautioned against premature celebration, but the entire team felt the shift in energy. What they were attempting was working, slowly but undeniably. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the junior members of the team, a young bioelectric engineer named James Park, had been studying recordings of Zorathi neural patterns. He noticed something the alien doctors had dismissed as background noise, a faint bioelectric rhythm that seemed to be trying to bridge the gap in Lyralii's damaged nerves. What if, he suggested during a late-night team meeting, we're not trying to replace what's broken, but amplify what's already trying to heal? It was a fundamentally different approach from anything the Zorathi had attempted. Instead of imposing a solution, they would work with the body's own attempts at repair. The team redesigned their entire treatment plan around this insight, creating a new type of bioelectric scaffold that resonated with the natural healing rhythms. The first test was scheduled for a morning when the Emperor was off-planet, attending to matters in a distant system. Lyralii insisted on being fully conscious for the procedure, wanting to experience every moment. Marcus stood with her, having become a constant presence during the treatments. As Dr. Walsh activated the new scaffold, Lyralii gasped, not in pain but in wonder. I can feel, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. My legs. I can feel my legs. It wasn't a miraculous cure. She couldn't suddenly stand and walk. But the sensation was spreading, nerves reconnecting, pathways reopening. The impossible was becoming possible, one bioelectric pulse at a time. News of the breakthrough couldn't be contained. Within hours, the entire court knew that the human doctors had achieved what Zorathi medicine had declared impossible. The reactions were mixed. joy from those who cared for Lyralii, skepticism from traditionalists, and intense curiosity from the scientific community. The emperor returned early from his trip, summoned by urgent messages. He arrived at the medical facility to find his daughter not in her anti-grav chair, but standing between parallel bars, her legs shaking with effort but supporting her weight for the first time in 5 years. "Father," Lyralii said, her voice strong despite the strain, "I'd like you to meet the humans who reminded me that impossible is just a word." The emperor stood in silence, watching his youngest daughter take a tentative step. Then another. Dr. Walsh stood ready to catch her if she fell, but her stance was protective, not possessive. The human medical team watched with the satisfaction of those who had achieved something beyond conventional wisdom. "How?" the emperor finally asked. Dr. Walsh stepped forward. "With respect, Your Majesty, we succeeded because we didn't know it was impossible. We approached the problem not as conquerors trying to impose our will on biology, but as partners working with the body's own wisdom. It's a very human approach, messy, intuitive, but effective. And this treatment, it could work for others? We believe so. Each case would be different, requiring individual adaptation. But the principle, working with the body rather than against it, amplifying natural healing rather than replacing it, that could revolutionize how we approach neural damage." The emperor moved to his daughter's side, offering his arm for support. She took it gratefully, but remained standing on her own power. "What do you need?" he asked Dr. Walsh. "Time, resources, more patients willing to try our approach, and, most importantly, the freedom to fail and learn from those failures without fear of retribution. You shall have all of that and more." The emperor's voice carried the authority of absolute command. Let it be known throughout the empire that human medical practices are to be studied and integrated where appropriate. The mining rights agreement stands as written, and Earth shall be recognized as a full partner in medical research. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. This was more than a diplomatic victory or a medical breakthrough. This was the beginning of a fundamental shift in how the Zarathi Empire viewed humanity and, perhaps more importantly, how they viewed themselves. Over the following months, the medical facility expanded into a full research center. Human and Zarathi doctors worked side by side, learning from each other. The fusion of human creativity and alien technology produced treatments that neither species could have developed alone. Lyralii's recovery continued steadily. She would never have the same physical capabilities as someone who had never been injured, but she could walk, run, even dance at the celestial celebration she had thought forever denied to her. More importantly, she became a symbol of what was possible when species worked together, when the impossible was challenged with determination and hope. The ripple effects spread far beyond medicine. Zarathi engineers began incorporating human problem-solving approaches. Diplomats started considering unconventional solutions. Artists found inspiration in humanity's chaotic creativity. The rigid hierarchy of the empire began to show flexibility it hadn't possessed in millennia. Not everyone welcomed these changes. Traditionalists spoke of contamination, of the empire losing its purity. But for every voice raised in protest, 10 more spoke of new possibilities, of problems solved that had been considered unsolvable, of hope where there had been only resignation. A year after that first meeting at the wrong table, Marcus stood with Princess Lyralii on an observation deck overlooking the construction of the first joint human Zarathi medical station. She walked without assistance now, her gait careful but confident. "Did you know this would happen?" Marcus asked. "When you arranged for me to sit at your table, did you foresee all of this?" Lyralii smiled, the expression transforming her features as it had that first day. "I hoped. I planned. But even I didn't imagine the full scope of what we would unleash. Humans have a saying, fortune favors the bold. I think it's more accurate to say that the universe responds to those who refuse to accept its limitations. The Emperor seems to have embraced the changes. My father is many things, but he's not fool enough to deny results. Thousands have been helped by human medicine. Our technology advances faster now that we've learned to think like humans sometimes. And perhaps most importantly, our young people dream again of impossible things. She turned to face him fully. But none of that would have happened if you hadn't signed that agreement. If you hadn't been willing to risk everything on the chance that a paralyzed princess and a frontier doctor could change the galaxy. It wasn't much of a risk, Marcus admitted. I've learned that betting on human stubbornness is usually a winning proposition. They stood in comfortable silence, watching ships arrive from across the empire. Many carried patients seeking the impossible. Others brought scientists eager to learn human methods. Each arrival represented another crack in the old ways, another seed of change planted in the ancient empire. What's next? Marcus asked. The Andromedans have reached out, Lyralii said casually. They have their own incurable conditions, their own impossible problems. I thought perhaps Dr. Walsh might be interested in an even greater challenge. Marcus laughed. 6 months ago, that would have seemed impossible. Exactly. Lyralii's smile widened. Isn't it wonderful? As the artificial suns began their descent toward evening, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A wrong table that was exactly right. A paralyzed princess who refused to accept limitations. A frontier doctor who didn't know her treatments were impossible. And a species too young and stubborn to know when to give up. The galaxy was changing one impossible achievement at a time. And it had all started with a simple question. What if we tried anyway? The human spirit, that indefinable quality that drove people to attempt what others wouldn't even consider, had proven to be humanity's greatest export. Not their technology, not their resources, but their simple refusal to accept that anything was truly beyond reach. And in the grand diplomatic halls of the Zarathi Empire, at a table where impossible meetings led to impossible outcomes, the revolution continued. One patient, one breakthrough, one dream at a time. The wrong table had become the center of a new galaxy, where impossible was just another word for not yet attempted.